Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Umar Khalid. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for TASDEEQ. We would like to welcome you to this webinar on credit bureaus, leveraging big data and machine learning to enhance financial inclusion in Pakistan. From artificial intelligence to machine learning, rapid advances in big data and digital technologies are transforming the financial services landscape, creating opportunities and challenges for consumers, service providers, and regulators. This digitization has strong implications for credit reporting industry. We at the TASDEEQ understand the market needs and are adapting and leveraging these new developments to better serve market needs and in enabling greater financial inclusion. Within this context, the speakers of this webinar will be discussing how emergence of new technologies use big data in credit decisioning and the opportunities and risks associated with these trends. The webinar will be moderated by Mr. Qazafi Qayyum, who is the CEO at Analytics Private Limited, a leading artificial intelligence, business analytics, big data analytics, and software engineering solution provider. Qazafi has over 22 years of extensive experience in data analytics, business consulting, professional services, strategic management, and various large-scale, and has worked with various large-scale multinational organizations, including Teradata Pakistan, where he served as the managing director. Qazafi has extensive knowledge and experience of devising reliable strategies around big data analytics to drive sustainable business for a variety of industries like telecom, financial services, government, and manufacturing. With this, I would hand over the webinar to Qazafi Qayyum and let him take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar, for the introduction, and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I appreciate you guys taking time out this evening to join us today. It's an interesting topic. Some people say that data is the new oil of the 21st century, while others believe that it is much more valuable because when you talk about data, you have the opportunity to reuse it several times in multiple ways and yet not deplete your asset. Having said that, I'm sure all of us on the call today agree that for any organization, data is one of the top strategic assets, regardless of the industry they're operating. And that is why we're seeing not only the conventional industries who are more tech savvy, like retail, manufacturing, telecom, and banking, using or relying on data for competitive advantage, but we're seeing the evolution of the emerging industries like sports and healthcare and agri, who have adopted data and have adopted the techniques for manipulating that data in terms of generating insights and really using that data to generate the competitive or strategic advantage that they require to operate in this competitive world or landscape that we're operating in. Fintech is no different. Being the flag bearers in the country to drive the financial inclusion objective or vision, they're tasked with a big objective and they have a big responsibility as well. And supported by credit bureaus such as TASDEEQ, who, being data collectors, have a big responsibility and role to play. I am really excited to have a very distinguished panel with me tonight, with me this evening, to discuss this further and talk about how the data evolution is revolutionizing the fintech space and why the credit bureaus become a key player when it comes to manipulating the data which is available to us. It is my pleasure to, first of all, introduce Ms. Zahra Khalekdina, who is the Chief Risk Officer for Microfinance Bank. She has worked with leading commercial Islamic and microfinance banks in Pakistan, including MCB, Askari Bank, Mizan Bank, and HPL Microfinance Bank as well. Her core competencies include enterprise-wide risk management. During her various roles, she has been engaged in the design and implementation of risk management strategies and frameworks to ensure coordinated and consistent risk management activities are undertaken across the institutions. Thank you, Zahra, for joining us.
You. My pleasure.
Then I have Mr. Ali Ahmed, who is the chairman of Maya Microfinance Bank. Mr. Ali is an accomplished executive and visionary leader with domestic and international experiences and socio-economic development. Thank you, Mr. Ali, for joining us. I VP Product Management for KISPay. Usman has been working with renowned FMCGs prior to joining KISPay, and during his short stint at KISPay, he has been able to revolutionize and help them pivot from a BNP to an embedded commerce platform. His areas of focus include project management, growth strategies, user experience design, product development, and product lifecycle management. Thank you, Usman, for joining us. And last but not least, pleasure. And last but not least, we also have Ms. Usma Imtiaz, who is a management executive for policy, regulation, and development for specialized companies division at Sccp, having more than 5 years of experience working with financial sector. Thank you to all panel members, and let's deep dive into it, starting with Ms. Zara. If you can talk to us about how important is data today for fintechs in general and credit bureaus in particular when you talk about the overall competitive landscape and the objective and vision which I talked about, which the fintech industry has set for itself.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. If we see how the financial industry is changing, earlier from having contact with each and every person, customer, analyzing his repayments patterns, his income, we were in direct touch with the customer. But now, since we are moving to the digital arena, so now it's not possible that I go and visit each and every customer, assess the customer, and then give him loan or open his account, even if I see KYC, if in AML regulations. So data is playing a big role in it. If we are moving towards digital banking, then I have to have data about the person, that how he is using his income, what is his utility bill payment patterns, which mobile sets they are using, how they are using, what amount they are spending on various shopping or on medical. And based on that data, I can offer structured products to them. For example, if I can get a data from somewhere that person is going to a particular doctor every time, I could assess that what could be his problem and offer him targeted insurance. So going forward, where in the digital world, as well as when we are talking about the unique selling point, that we have to be customer focused and have to cater to their requirement. So just sitting in the office and just assessing a proposal or hard copy of information filled by the customer or the branch banking officer is not enough. We need to have a complete, and it's like if I'll consider the people who are coming to my branch for the loan, then my universe is very limited. Now, if we look at the financial inclusion, especially in a microfinance industry, we have a double objective. One is to make profit, obviously, but the other is, the most important one is to help the poor, especially those who can have the means, who have the talent, but does not have the resources to earn their livelihood. So if I have to reach those people, it's very important that I have the data, I have information about them, that who have the resources, who I need to help, what sort of products they need, not just for, the loan purpose, but for the insurance. If you see the, lot of everybody is having a health problem, like in flood right now. If I'll have the right kind of data, I would be able to help those who have been affected by the flood and give them the right product or the right assistance in any way. So I believe, and when it's coming to the digital world, then just assessment is not enough. Credit scoring, which is a very important part, cannot be done without the data I have. If I use my data, then it would be limited to the customer behavior with the bank. But if we go into the artificial intelligence and machine learning and accumulate the data from various sources, then I'll be better able to predict that what would be the customer's behavior and how his repayment capacity is, and how he will perform in future as far as my loan is concerned.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight, Zara. I think what you talked about in terms of the marketplace really having to personalize is key, because without the personalized service offering, every consumer has so many options these days that they would be going to the competition if they find something which is well suited to their requirements. Ali, coming to you, we've talked about the importance of data, including the fintech industry as well. But until and unless organizations are able to use that data using different techniques, be it big data, be it artificial intelligence, machine learning, you're not you have a raw material where it has some potential value, but you will not be able to realize that potential value and really use that for business strategic objective or decision making until and unless you're able to adopt these new technologies, right? Do you think AI is still a hype in terms of the buzzword, everyone is talking about it, or do you see it really being relevant for players, especially in the fintech and the credit bureau industry today? I think, Ali, you're still on mute. If you could unmute.
Okay. Thank you, Kazi, for this opportunity, and I would also thank TASDEEQ that they have this discussion on this topic. So previously, as you said, that data is the oil, So, but going further, I would say that data is the soil of everything, because if we look at it, data, the whole universe is data, if we look at it from that term. Now, when coming to data, you see, unless we make use of a data, there is little value out of it. So right. What kind of value we can generate, and what are, first of all, we have to see when we look at credit bureaus or credit reporting, there are mainly currently two major sources of data. One is the traditional data, the aggregation of data. The other is alternative sources, which includes big data. Now, mostly the credit bureaus are using traditional data so far, but they have now embarked onto big data as well and other alternative sources of data. But when you look, there are three key components. One is the description, like descriptive component of the data, because that is based on history. Then the second comes, which is the predictive. So we can find that what is going to happen in future or based on the data. But then there is another one, which is perspective. What kind of actions needs to be taken? So these three major things need to come out of the data. This is so important that we have to process the data to get out that information. Now, when we look at the sources of data, those sources of data which come analyzing traditional data is quite easier, as it has been done for quite long. But when it comes to big data, there are new techniques that are being applied. So because when we talk of big data, which includes data from social media as well, like videos, audios, and all kind of components, how we can make use of this data, this is very important. So we have new tools and techniques that are being introduced. So AI has been a very buzzword, but I think we have moved ahead and AI is very much in use. When we look in the financial sector, how it is being used, you can look at, we have been using decision trees, So based on that, different kind of rules have been applied. So currently there are in credit bureaus, the decision trees are being applied. It's kind of an AI where like the random forest And, so it's also part of decision tree. So those kind of components are already being applied. And we look at Equifax. They have come up with neuro decision technology, how the brain makes decision. So those that out of it. Now we look at that, one of the component is the data is used for financial institutions so they can make better decisions. So it's credit worthiness. But we can go beyond that, because in this dynamic world, things are changing. Yeah, there are so much shifts in demand and supply. So we have to look at patterns. Maybe, the people who are between age 18 and 20 are using maybe consumer loans or student loans. Others are using auto loans, and how the demand is changing. That is very important, that that kind of value we have generate for the financial institution. Similarly, why we use the big data and other kind of non-traditional information is some of the clients are not on the credit file, they are invisible. So how to get to those people? So we need to have tools and the required or access to those information or that data where we can bring them, because access or financial access is very important. So a lot of the population, when we look even to Pakistan, a lot of the population is outside this credit bureau information or the credit file. Their information is not there. So how to get to those invisible kind of, who are invisible to data? So that is where social data can be used for. And then the other is what kind of products we come up with, what is the customer demand, how we can use data to get to that as well. So in all of that, when we come to artificial intelligence, one component is the main data, then is the big data, then we use algorithms for financial, like, in the artificial intelligence, and then finally human judgment. That is also important. So we combine together, and I think we can get to a more ideal kind of situation based on this.
Great, very insightful. Thank you, Ali, for that. You were talking about the fact that AI is something which is very relevant. And I think if we look at Gartner and the hype cycle they do for each emerging technology, the hype cycle for AI, Gartner places us beyond the peak of inflated expectations, where for any new emerging technology, people feel that it is the answer or the holy grail for every problem out there in the world. But the fact is that AI has now passed that peak of inflated expectation, and now is at a point where organizations better understand the real value which AI can bring to their businesses. So thank you for that insight. Usman, if I can come to you, I think Ali did discuss this at a high level in terms of the data landscape. But if you could help us understand a bit better the actual data landscape in play when it comes to fintechs and credit bureaus in particular, both in internal and external data sets, what is available and what is the potential value of those data sets available today?
All right. Yeah, thank you. It was very insightful. I'm going to just use that and build up on that. And so essentially what has happened is for the longer period of time, we've had credit cards, which after a lot of KYC were given out to a very small percentage of population. And that excluded a number of people who had debit cards. And even within debit cards, specifically considering the US market, who did not have, who fell down from the central credit scoring for some reason or the other. So when BNPLs came in, they sort of broke that status quo. But then let's talk about specifically for Pakistan or many emerging markets which don't have established central credit scoring units. And so In Pakistan, then you would have to struggle a lot more to get to understand what the data layers are. So you have to establish your own. And so State Bank already has, you could report if someone defaults in State Bank, then has monthly reporting on the and you could get a sort of a credit score, but it's not eligible. It doesn't actually tell you anything solid. And another thing that has happened globally was that a lot of people have migrated. So Ukrainians have gone over to the UK now, and they have zero credit scores. So they've unfortunately they're not able to get any credit lines. These people who had really good credit scores have no history in another geography, and it can be a similar situation for us with Afghanistan. But this is overall a problem that has existed. Very specifically, with data layers, when we started for CISP specifically, when we started to build out patterns, we had to drop it down into three different layers. There was merchant level scoring. So we had to look at the quality of merchants. Within the quality of merchants, different underwriting for depending on the product line items. So for example, the underscoring for electronics and with high average order value is very different to apparel, where people are most likely to more easily repay their installments. And all of this has been built up from the ground up with no help of existing infrastructure, specifically in the case of, because we operated with debit cards mostly, not credit cards. And so in light of all of this, so this was merchant scoring is one level, customer scoring is another level, transaction level scoring is another level, looking at geography and factor, geography and IP addresses and all of those in that specific time period, what's happening when the transaction is happening. And then to layer it down even further, you have social profiling. And so social profiling is understanding the data, that what kind of device they're on, what is their, what kind of social media accounts do they have, what is their last seen on WhatsApp. And all of this then builds into a larger function that we call the credit scoring. And these are just, these are very high level brushstrokes. Obviously, there's like almost 800 indicators that we use and use those to build that out. Finally is the fraud layer. Fraud layer, I feel, is more easily fixed just because the first time you're lending out, it's really hard to block people. Second time, you have historic data, so it's not that hard. And also you can rely on lookalikes, understanding patterns, pattern matching, understanding what kind of ideal profiles you want to go after, and then running a lot of micro experiments to develop those scores. So specifically for where AI is concerned, I'm not sure, we're not at that level, but generally machine learning is at a stage where we can just use those algorithms to really help us develop or refine the view of the world.
Excellent. Thank you, Usman, for that insight. Usman, coming towards you, and because you're representing Sccp as one of the relevant regulators in addition to SPP when it comes to the overall fintech landscape. How do you guys look at it in terms of AI and machine learning and this whole data proliferation that is happening in today's world? How relevant do you think it is for the regulators? And what's your advice, or how do you want to drive the fintech space in terms of the adoption around this area?
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Usman, go ahead. We can hear you.
मैं मोबाइल से मिनट्स के मैं उसको लैपटॉप से कनेक्ट कर लूं तो I'll get back to you. I just need 5 minutes.
Okay, sure. We'll come back. So coming back to Zara, how do you see the overall fintech landscape evolving over the next 2-3 years? And what do you think is the role for the credit bureaus going to be? Is it simply going to be from a regulatory compliance perspective, or do you see a bigger role for the bureaus? Zara, you're on mute.
Ji.
Ji, please go ahead.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So I was asking how you see the overall fintech space evolving in the next 2 to 3 years. And what do you think is the role for the credit bureaus that they need to play? Is it simply going to be a regulatory compliance sort of a role, or do you think it's going to be a much bigger role that they need to put in?
It would be a very bigger role, not just the compliance part, because the credit bureau, there is one aspect of it that they provide us, the history of the customer. But, as far as I'm involved with this TASDEEQ, there are different projects that you guys are working on, and, the support that we need from you is in like number of ways. The information that you provide, not just the repayment, but I think the Sccp and the government has asked you to incorporate the utility bill information also along with the ECIV. If we get that kind of information from you, it would help us making better financial decisions. Even fraud detection and security could enhance a lot if we are getting more, artificial intelligence or machine learning kind of information that, if I have a depositors and he uses a debit card at certain location, at certain cities. So if, the card is used somewhere else or or some unusual transaction is done, and if that information is shared with me, I would be able to stop those frauds. Customer support, even, if there are any overdues in the customer's history and customer is not aware about it, credit bureau is even helping those customers fixing those issues that they usually call the credit bureau that, why this amount is reflecting in my ECIB when I don't have any information about it. Loan, of course, insurance, as I told earlier, also that, if we have the right kind of information, we will be able to offer better products to our customers. Forecast, which is very important, credit scoring. And, the most important part of the fintech as compared to the commercial banking or the normal bank, microfinance banking is that, especially for the microfinance banking, administrative cost is very, very high. If we are able to move to the digital channels, to the fintech, we would be able to reduce our administration cost a lot. Administration cost, is around like 20 to 22% of our entire cost structure, because microfinance banks are working in far-flung areas where the commercial banks don't even go. And our nature of our banking is that customers don't come to us, we go to the customers, even for the collection part. So if we move to the fintechs, we are offering digital solutions, then life would be easier for us and as well as for our customer. When our cost will reduce, we would be able to reduce our pricing as well. Automation of routine process is one thing which we can do through artificial intelligence and machine learning. So there are a lot of areas where actually, the big data plays a role. And the most important thing, data is everywhere, but you have to convert that data into information. When it is converted into information, then it is useful, and it would not only be helping financial institution or fintech achieve their profitability, but in a greater interest of, we would be able to help the economy, especially those people who are, away from the banking side. We need to, for financial inclusion, it's very important that we reach the customer. But how can we reach the customer? It would increase our costs. So through fintech, we would be able to offer them better services at their doorstep, without actually going to the desktop, but on their cell phones, on their tablets, on their laptops. So, and fintech cannot work, or the digital products we cannot offer unless and until we have the data about the customer. Not just the data, but the information, because data is there, but to leverage the data, you have to convert that data into the information.
Great. Absolutely, I totally agree with the perspective you provided. Ali, coming to you, I think Zahra talked about the fact that there needs to be visibility provided to the end consumer in terms of why he's being rated in a certain manner. And in your previous talk, you talked about different algorithms. So when we talk about machine learning in general, and especially when you talk about unsupervised sort of models where you let the machine decide how it is going to interpret a certain data set, how important is the explainability aspect of machine learning? How relevant is it for the lender organizations? And how relevant is it for the actual borrowers? And what is your thought process in terms of the amount of visibility that needs to be provided by organizations who are adopting AI, including credit bureaus? Ali, you're on mute. If you can unmute yourself, please. Ali, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Kazafi, for the question. It's a very important question because explainability in AI is very important. So there are, currently wherever AI is used, still there are a lot of testing goes on. It's very important to test the algorithms. That is very important. For that, there is a decision tracing model. So the institutions have to adopt decision tracing. So what kind of decision has been made through the AI or by the AI based on the algorithm, and what impact it had on the consumers or the institutions. So that is very important. So that means that there needs to be a decision decision tracing capability within the institutions. That is so important. Now coming to the second part, which is the visibility. Like currently, when you see that the end consumer have little access to the information that has been gathered or captured by credit bureaus, and how they are maintaining it. So I think this is a right to the consumer to have access to their data. So that data needs to be accessible to the consumer. So that is one component, because here when I think in most of the part of the world now, this is very important that in the Western world, they have given access to consumers to look at their data and then see why certain kind of decisions or certain scoring has been made. What is the scoring based on? How they can ask for or challenge that, whether it's compliance or it's the ability of the consumer to ask for why there is certain scoring. Now, the second part is about the institutions, the financial institutions who are making decisions based on the scoring. For them, it's still kind of, when they are using AI, there needs to be a human judgment initially applied till the maturity of the AI system. So for them, they have still employed, to whatever my knowledge is, most of the bureaus in the Western world have employed human judgment as well, wherever they are applying AI. So those are the key things. So for here, in the case of Pakistan, I think we would also need to build those capabilities here, where if we have to use AI, we have to use it responsibly, and it needs to be fair to both the consumer and to the institution. And the other component here, I would say, is one thinking that we need to come out is we have to look at opportunities than risk when it comes to consumers, because most of the institutions are looking at the risk part only. They don't look at the data as an opportunity. So we have to shift our thinking from risk to opportunity. And also the data adds the approval or decision making, a positive decision making. And then the third component, which I would say is this whole information in the end should provide a value for the consumer in terms of product, that the product matches their needs. So that is key. So I would think that these are the major components when we look at it.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight, Ali. Usman, coming to you, I think Ali rightly was talking about the consumer and the impact that the data and the adoption of AI has for the consumer. But if you talk about the current situation of credit bureaus, they're predominantly operating in a B2B market. So how do you think they need to transition from just a B2B to a B2C environment, number one? And number two, just adding on top of that question, how do you educate the end consumer? How do you make them understand the data, why they should be concerned and why it's relevant for them?
Right. I think this is an excellent question. And it's a space that we're still in exploration phase for it. Mostly, I think over time, data privacy is a really big issue. And then also the trust factor. Essentially, customers are able to trust brands that they have had better experiences with, brands that they know their data is safe with, and it's not getting misused with, especially with our transition into Web3, which is eventually coming where you have ownership of your data. Maybe in that stream, you will allow certain credit bureaus to hold it. And so this is what I'm saying. It's still we're still very new to this, because mostly B2B companies use it to decide what happens when lending or not lending, or even when utilizing upselling or even customization. There could be many use cases for how credit bureau data is utilized. Specifically for B2C, I feel that we'll have, and we've seen this very recently also, a lot of new companies have started coming into Pakistan with foreign companies mostly, and what they want is a local partner who understands what's happening on the ground, and then also bring some credibility over to their side, and using a credit bureau that does just that for them, and will elevate it will improve credibility for all of these brands till they specifically become their own versions. And that's one way I feel that B2C can come into action. I can foresee customers opting which credit bureau profiles them and how they get loans approved. I can see customers challenging an application and then asking a bank to try a different credit bureau because they're better. They're still, maybe there's even a rating system that gets developed eventually for credit bureaus in itself. And these are just from the top of my head. But essentially, there is a brand play over there. There's a trust factor. There's a data security, privacy factors. There's just because we've seen what happens is trust, and especially in South Asian markets, can be very quickly consolidated behind a couple of brands. So, for example, Kareem does a really good job in Pakistan for that. we see that in India, Bollywood does a really good job. So it's just that how do you concentrate trust behind the brand, and that will effectively translate into meaningful, lasting B2B as well.
Excellent. Uzma, coming to you, I just wanted to get your perspective in terms of what you've heard all the other panelists talk about. So we've been talking about the importance of data. We've been talking about why AI is relevant. I just wanted to get your perspective from a regulatory perspective, representing Sccp, being one of the relevant parties from a regulatory perspective. How do you see the importance of data for the industry, especially for credit bureaus? And how relevant do you think this whole AI hype is for us as an industry?
First of all, apologies for the inconvenience. Secondly, it's good if we are talking about the data and the machine learning and AI based all these discussions. But being a part of the regulator, I have different perspective to discuss and share. जब तक हम बेसिक्स को नहीं आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे तो फिर ये एडवांसमेंट तो थोड़ा लेटर स्टेज पे आती है. जो चीजें मैंने नोट की थी डिस्कस करने के लिए और शेयर करने के लिए वो ये है कि जो क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज हैं उनकी नीड जो थी, जो आइडेंटिफाई हुई थी इनिशियली कि क्यों होने चाहिए, और जो हमने स्टेट बैंक का एक सनसेट क्लॉज जो कि डिटरमिन हुआ था कि इस वजह से होने चाहिए क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज के वो बिल्कुल एक्सक्लूड हो जाएं, स्टेट बैंक खुद को साइड पे कर ले. और क्या वो जो रिक्वायरमेंट्स जो क्रेडिट ब्यूरो से एक्सपेक्ट की जा रही थी वो फुलफिल हो रही है या नहीं हो रही है. इफ यू टॉक अबाउट NIFS स्ट्रैटेजी के 2020 में जनाब 20% पॉपुलेशन हमारी फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन का पार्ट बन जाएगी. अगर हम उसको देखें, आप में से कोई उसको एड्रेस कर सकता है तो कितने परसेंट उसको अचीव कर लिया है वो जब क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज नहीं थे. और पिछले 2-3 सालों में जो ये दो हमारे पास क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज आए हैं उनकी क्या परफॉर्मेंस रही है, क्या हम उसको अचीव कर सके हैं कि नहीं कर सके. फिर एक क्वेश्चन रेगुलेटरी पर्सपेक्टिव से ये आता है कि उसका साइज कितना होना चाहिए. क्या 2 क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज पूरी मार्केट को या पूरी पॉपुलेशन को सर्व करने के लिए काफी है. और स्टेट बैंक की रिप्लेसमेंट बेसिकली इतना आसान टास्क नहीं होगा. डेटा की कंपाइलेशन, उसकी गैदरिंग, उसकी प्रोसेसिंग, उसकी प्रोविजन, जो कि मुझे लगता है कंपैरेटिवली मुश्किल होगी क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज के लिए. उसमें चैलेंजेस भी होंगे, आप लोगों के ऑब्वियसली डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव होंगे. फिर जो आउटलाइन शेयर की गई उसमें कुछ स्ट्रक्चर और अनस्ट्रक्चर डेटा की बात आती है. स्ट्रक्चर डेटा आप इकट्ठा कर लेते हैं, ले लेते हैं, ठीक है. अनस्ट्रक्चर डेटा की बात करें तो प्रैक्टिकली पॉसिबल नहीं है कि आप उस सारे डेटा को स्ट्रक्चर कर सकें. तो अकॉर्डिंगली जो आपका रिस्क स्कोरिंग या रिस्क प्रोफाइलिंग बनती है फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस के लिए वो भी उतनी इफेक्टिव नहीं हो सकती. स्ट्रक्चर्ड अनस्ट्रक्चर्ड डेटा किस लेवल तक फॉर एग्जांपल आप इकट्ठा कर सकते हैं. आपने टेलको से कोऑर्डिनेट कर लिया, आपने क्या कहते हैं इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का उसका रिकॉर्ड ले लिया, आप उसकी बिल पेमेंट जितनी भी है सारी चीजें आप ले रहे हैं. बट स्टिल मैं किसी रेंटेड हाउस में रहती हूँ, मैं उसका बिल पे नहीं करती, वो मीटर किसी और के नाम पे है, वो उसके रिकॉर्ड में जाएगा, वो मेरी प्रोफाइल का पार्ट नहीं बनेगा. तो ऐसी छोटी छोटी कुछ ऑब्जर्वेशंस हैं जो कि रिस्ट्रिक्ट करती हैं उस पूरे डेटा की गैदरिंग और कंपाइलेशन में. तो जब तक उस चीज को एड्रेस नहीं किया जा सकता पर्पस सर्व नहीं होगा. फिर इसमें एक चीज ये सोची जा सकती है कि अगर हम इस साइज को इंक्रीज करने के लिए, क्योंकि हमारे जो सिस्टम की कैपेसिटी है हार्डवेयर सॉफ्टवेयर बोथ वो इतनी नहीं है कि आप इन इश्यूज को एड्रेस कर सकें. अगर हम इंटरनेशनल टेक्नोलॉजी, इंटरनेशनल ब्यूरोज को यहाँ पे लेके आते हैं, उनको अलाउ करते हैं, तो उसकी क्या लिमिटेशंस होगी. कैन वी डू दैट, कैन वी लाइक एबल टू ग्रास्प जो भी चीजें वो लेके आएंगे. ऑब्वियसली एक रिच एक्सपीरियंस होगा, एक पॉजिटिव चीजें होंगी, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ थ्रेट्स भी होंगे, डेटा प्राइवेसी और ये बहुत सारी सेंसिटिव चीजें होती हैं. एक और पॉइंट मेरे जहन में आया था जो हमारी क्या कहते हैं डेटा शेयरिंग से रिलेटेड चीजें, जैसे क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज आपके CIBs वगैरह और ये चीजें शेयर कर रहे होते हैं. तो जो हमारी GDPR की बेसिक एक रिक्वायरमेंट है कि आप किसी का भी डेटा उसके कंसेंट के बगैर शेयर नहीं कर सकते। इंस्टीट्यूशन तो लोन लेते हुए आपसे फॉर्म साइन करा लेता है कि हम आपका डेटा लेंगे, फॉर दिस पर्पस विल यूज इट। क्या क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज इस चीज को कंसिडर कर रहे हैं कि वो इंडिविजुअल का डेटा इंस्टीट्यूशंस के साथ शेयर करते हुए उनका कंसेंट लें? दीज आर फ्यू मेरी ऑब्जर्वेशन है कुछ डिस्कशन के लिए, क्योंकि डेटा और मशीन लर्निंग आई थिंक के थोड़ा एडवांस स्टेजेस है। रेगुलेटरी पर्सपेक्टिव से वी नीड टू सेट द बेस फर्स्ट और फिर उसकी डेवलपमेंट पे जाया जा सकता है।
Fair point. Uzma, thank you for your insights. And I'm sure, these are some of the challenges which every emerging industry has to go through. So as long as the industry is working together with the support of the regulators, the world has shown that these problems can be overcome. They're very pertinent points which you just highlighted. So there's no two question in terms of their relevance and importance in the discussion that we've been having so far. But taking this thought process forward, and I know there are a lot of questions, and in the interest of time, I need to take some of those questions from the audience as well. But before we move to the questions from the audience, just picking up from what Uzma talked about, how important, and this is for all the panelists, how important do you think legislation is when you talk about AI adoption or data adoption in the fintech space or the credit bureaus? I'll give you an example. When you talk about self-driving cars, I think the technology is proven, but when you talk about their efficacy in terms of the real world, if a self-driving car gets into an accident, God forbid, who is responsible? Is it the owner of the software of that self-driving vehicle? Is it the manufacturer of the self-driving vehicle, or is it the owner of the self-driving vehicle, right? So this is where legislation needs to be done in terms of providing the clarity. So again, relating it to what Uzma talked about, do you, all the panelists, feel that there is some legislation which needs to be done in order for the industry to really be able to leverage the AI potential which it has to offer? Maybe starting with Zahra, you.
Gee. There has to be some starting point. If we look at the developed countries, they have come to that model. So as a nation, we need to take some steps, even if they are baby steps, but we have to move forward. Because, with the changing landscape where we are moving from commercial or, commercial or conventional banking to digital world, to fintech, there we could only success if I have the information about the customer. As a bank, we do get, consent from the customers that, your data would be shared with relevant stakeholders, and credit bureau or state bank is one of them. And as per the act, even everybody is supposed to, each bank have to share data with credit bureaus. So, we need to lay the foundation, start working on them. Once, the system would start building itself, and, we'll keep moving ahead, then we'll have a proper system around it. But just thinking all the questions, if we stop now, then, there would not be any progress. So I think a lot of progress has been made since I think in last couple of years, a lot of progress has been made. Credit scoring is now being offered by credit bureaus. You guys are working to get the utility data and other information from the customer. Yes, there are challenges, like usually cell phones are not in the name of, of the owner. I could be using somebody else's SIM, and there's like usually this kind of a trend, especially, there was one analysis that we were doing, and, most of the frauds were in the name of the females, but those females were not doing the fraud, but, the frauds were registered in their name because somebody else was using their SIMs. So once we'll start to lay foundation, then we'll start moving. If we have to, fulfill our aim of financial inclusion, bring banks to people phone, then we have to take these steps as an industry, not just the banks, but the credit bureaus, other regulatory bodies, we need to actually communicate with each other, come up with suggestions on how to improve the process, what we require, what credit bureau requires, what regulator requires, what our industry and economy requires, what our people requirements are. So once we'll identify those needs, we'll work together, then only would be able to achieve the the dream of financial inclusion, where each and every person should have their bank account, they should be doing all the transactions through bank. Who a decade ago will be making transactions through cell phones. We used to go to the branches to make to deposit the check to get the money, but now we don't have to. So times are changing, our processes have to change. And I think it's a very good initiative what government or state bank has done so far. And we have to keep moving. And it's not just the credit bureau part, but even banks, now they are setting up their own data scientists, getting the data scientists, sending, making their own departments. So once we would start moving on in this direction, things will definitely improve. And this is the need of the time.
Thank you, Zara. I'll go and take a few questions from the audience. So Ali, one of the members have asked, and this is Kalimullah. He's saying, hello, is there empirical evidence that supports improved quality of loans by leveraging big data and machine learning for microfinance institutions?
Can I answer that?
Sure, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, there is definitely. Like if, you don't take any credit history of the client, how would I know that, the client has defaulted with other banks? Because one of the basic requirement of taking a loan is that you should be able to, in future, in past, you have repaid your loan. And that information only comes from your repayment history. So even if not the scoring card, if I just take a credit report of a customer, I would be able to know that, in last 2 years, what that person has done. I would just share one example that, there was one case that came for processing, and it was written that, the customer, the loan is due with one of the banks for last 2 years. And it was like surprising that, loan is due for 2 years and still it's in doubtful 90 days plus and not moved to write-off. So when we talk to the customer, we found out that there is a litigation case, and we rejected that loan request. So definitely, these things do matter. If that information is not available with us, that how the customer is working with other banks, how is his payment history, then definitely there would be more losses compared to if we are not when we are taking it and we are being able to identify that going forward, this customer would default with us as well.
Thank you, Zara. Ali, coming to you, and there's a question from Nabil Ahmed. I think there were a couple actually, but the one I'm going to pick is, how will you evaluate new clients in Pakistan market where a low-class shopkeeper, for example, or any other person trading mostly in cash? So talking about the data sets available and how we can use the techniques that we talked about in terms of addressing this scenario.
Yeah, this is like, because I previously said that mainly credit invisibility is a problem, that in this case, like, because if the traditional data is not available, then most of the financial institutions are unable to evaluate. But here is a solution, which is that alternative ways of extracting data. For example, the information when we look at social media, or in some cases nowadays, most of the fintechs are using mobile data. They are getting information with the consent of the customers from their cell phones, and that brings customer behavior. In other ways, for example, there is also a case like some of the data shows that the iPhone users can pay a loan compared to others. This is just an example, but it cannot be on an individual basis because it's a group. So maybe, everyone might not, but this is just an example. So there are ways where information is extracted through alternative means, because if data is invisible, or they are invisible to credit because the information is not available on the credit file, then definitely alternative ways needs to be adopted, and that is there. So it can from the consumer behavior, one can decide, one can extract the information, and based on that decisions can be made.
Thank you, Ali. Usman, a question from
every startup fintech owner is very worried about a banking license, and every bank CEO is very worried about their banking app. Hard to break through, and but employing technology over a longer period of time, and distribution is much easier through this technology. We have very forward-looking regulators, Sccp, the State Bank, NADRA. They're doing excellent work in all of these domains to provide us that foundation where you could build, like, at least the infrastructure layer, where you could build up this financial inclusion part. And so it's an exciting time overall. I can't speak to how it will, like, what is going to happen in that space, but definitely we've made significant progress, and I can only see it going up further very quickly.
Thank you, Usman. Usman, there is a question from one of our anonymous attendees, and I direct this to you. How are SCCP and SPP helping credit bureaus, financial institutions to achieve financial inclusion? Do they have any policy framework in place?
Well, I was expecting Akmal Bhatti sahab be join karenge isko, so we can have a detailed discussion on this. एक जनरल एड्रेस कर देती हूँ मैं इसको, क्योंकि ये एक इशू है। क्योंकि अगर हम कहते हैं कि हम 20% भी आपकी पॉपुलेशन का फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन में लेके आते हैं, तो 20% के अंदर भी आपके ये देखना है हमने कि वो यूनिक अकाउंट्स कितने हैं। देयर इज लॉट्स ऑफ डुप्लीकेशन, वो उसमें डोरमेंट अकाउंट्स भी आ जाते हैं आपके, तो वो एक्चुअली 20% भी वो इफेक्टिव 20% नहीं होता है। तो अगर आप 220 मिलियन की पॉपुलेशन में से इसको फिल्टर आउट करें तो वो 18-19% या 20% भी करें तो 44 मिलियन बनता है। उनको आप रेगुलेट कर रहे हैं, उनको आप एआई की तरफ लाने की कोशिश करें, या उनके डेटा से आप सिस्टम को एडवांस करने की कोशिश करें, इज अप्रोप्रिएट सुनने में भी नहीं लगता और प्रैक्टिकली तो ऑब्वियसली नहीं है। व्हाट वी कैन डू इज के जितने भी रेगुलेटर्स हैं उनको कस्टमर साइड से तो एक ऐसा कल्चर चेंज करने की जरूरत है कि लोग इस तरफ आए। क्या होता है कि पहली चीज आप अपनी इनकम को देख लें, कहीं भी आप चले जाएं बाहर, आप अपनी इनकम का 40% एक्सपेंस होता है या 60% एक्सपेंस होता है, बाकी 40-60 आपके पास सेविंग होती है। हमारे पास अगर एक स्टूडेंट अकाउंट खुलवाता है तो वो अकाउंट नहीं खुलवाता कि मैं अकाउंट में 5000 रखूंगा तो मेरा बैंक कितने चार्जेस काट लेगा, मुझे इतने चार्जेस इस पे लग जाएंगे, इस पे लग जाएंगे, तो वो इस डर से बैंक की तरफ नहीं आता। फिर इसी तरह आपके पेशावर साइड पे चले जाएं, मतलब उनके ट्रंक्स भरे पड़े होते हैं पैसों के, बट वो उसको डॉक्यूमेंट्स की तरफ नहीं लेके आते क्योंकि उन्हें इनकम टैक्स का होता है कि जी एफबीआर वाले आ जाएंगे, टैक्स ले लेंगे, फिर बैंक्स के अपने चार्जेस होंगे, फिर हमें एएमएल वाले आ जाएंगे। तो भी रेगुलेटर्स को इस पॉइंट पे आके म्यूचुअल डिस्कशन से एक पॉलिसी डिवाइस करने की जरूरत है कि हम लेवरेज के साथ साथ कैसे इसको प्रमोट कर सकें। अगर मैं हमारे डिजिटल लेंडर्स में से एनबीएफसी में मैंने देखा था कोई है किस पे से यहाँ पे या फिर हमारे सरमाया से, तो अगर हम फिनटेक टेक्नोलॉजी की बात करते हैं, जैसे वो भी एक इमर्जिंग सेक्टर है, एक नया एरिया है, तो उसको भी रेगुलेट करने की जरूरत है। जब पिछले कुछ 5-6 महीनों में बहुत ना होने की वजह से हमारा जो भी बॉरोवर साइड है उसको बहुत अफेक्ट कर गई है ये चीजें, तो हमने उस पर एक सोचा कि एक फ्रेमवर्क बनाया जाता है इनकी इंटरेस्ट रेट की कैपिंग और इस तरह का एक और सर्कुलर, उस पर कुछ इंडस्ट्री का फीडबैक आया। लेट मैं एक एग्जांपल देती हूँ, हमने कूलिंग ऑफ पीरियड प्रपोज किया कि इसमें 24 आवर्स का कूलिंग ऑफ पीरियड होना चाहिए। तो जो हमारे इंडस्ट्री के पार्टिसिपेंट्स थे उनकी तरफ से ये चीज आई कि अगर हम उस पर जो हमारी ऑपरेशनल कॉस्ट ही देख लें, 5-7 हजार के लोन के ऊपर ऑपरेशनल कॉस्ट 200-400 भी मैटर करती है, और अगर हम वो लगा लेते हैं और 24 घंटे के बाद वो हमें लोन वापस मिल जाता है, उसके ऊपर हमें कोई प्रॉफिट नहीं होता, तो वो हमारे लिए नुकसान है। तो उन चीजों को भी देखना है हमने बीइंग रेगुलेटर कि हम उस इंडस्ट्री को भी ना रोकें और बोरोर का इंटरेस्ट भी जो है वो सेफ होना चाहिए। तो उसके लिए रेगुलेटर्स को जो मुझे लगता है एक ड्यूटी ड्रॉबैक मैकेनिज्म बेस्ड व्हीकल कुड बी अ गुड सजेशन, कि हम देख सकें कि कोई ऐसी कॉस्ट जो आपको वर्डलाइज कर रही है उसको रीपे कर सकें या रीइंबर्स कर सकें, सबको मिलके कुछ ना कुछ रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी अपने एंड पे लेनी चाहिए। वी आर ऑन इट, वी आर डिस्कसिंग कि इसको कैसे एड्रेस किया जा सकता है। आई विल कंक्लूड विद फाइनल रिमार्क्स कि आई एनकरेज जो भी क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज की पार्टिसिपेशन है और जो भी उनकी पेनिट्रेशन है, जो भी उनकी कोशिशें हैं, सारी चीजें, बट कंसिडरिंग हमारे इकोनॉमिक इंडिकेटर्स, आज आईएमएफ का आउटलुक आप आज का देख लें, 18% इन्फ्लेशन अगले साल में प्रिवेल करेगी। फिर आप हमारी पर कैपिटा इनकम देख लें, फिर आप हमारी डॉलर टू पीकेआर पैरिटी देख लें, तो इन सारी चीजों को कंसिडर करते हुए आई प्रिज्यूम के क्रेडिट ब्यूरोज के लिए भी प्रैक्टिकली इन इश्यूज को एड्रेस करना उतना आसान नहीं होगा, ना ही सिग्निफिकेंट रोल कुछ उस तरह से प्ले कर पाएंगे।
Thank you, Usma, for your thoughts. I know there are still a few questions which have not been answered. Maybe I'll request, in the interest of time, that the TASDEEQ team to try and answer those offline. I will now hand it over to Mr. Fahad Sajid from the Pakistan Fintech Network for a quick closing remarks based on the discussions that the panelists have had around this topic today. Fahad Sahab, over to you.
Thank you very much, Gunapi. So first of all, I would like to thank you all respected participants. They have taken out time from their busy schedules and make this discussion an interesting one. So certainly it was an interesting discussion, and it is quite evident that it's a need of time that we have to embed these technologies which we have just discussed into our services industry. And for that matter, as PFN, whatever role we can, will ensure that whatever role we can play in that, we will. So in the same stance, what we'll do is that we'll make a white paper around this discussion, and then taking out the actionable points from that white paper and taking out to the industry as well as the regulators to look at it and to see that how we can overcome these challenges which are being faced to introduce these technologies into the industry. So again, lastly, I will not take long time. Thank you very much for being with us, and thank you very much for making our discussion so interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Fahad. And in the end, I would like to thank all of the panelists. It's been a very insightful discussion for me. Data, we're very passionate. So I've spent almost 25 years in the data space. And I think the potential that we talk about is real for the Pakistani market across all the industries, including fintech. We should continue to have such interactions by discussing. I'm sure we'll be able to, improve things and resolve the roadblocks that we see present today. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Zara. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Usman. And thank you, Usman, for your participation. Really appreciate it. And thank you to TASDEEQ and Pakistan Fintech Network for arranging this discussion for us today. Good evening and take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you.